I wanted to make a video today about some things I've been thinking about having to do with ADD and men, grown men, adult men, especially adult men who haven't been diagnosed or haven't been treated. So in my dating life, I'll just like give you a little glimpse into it, what it's been like in the past. Um, I'm just going to talk about three men that I've met recently or like had brief exchanges with. Well, one of them has been long term, but I'll just tell you about all three. All right, so I've been single since like 2011, and I moved to the state I'm in now, like in 2015, and in the town I was in, I lived there for 8 years, and it was really hard to find anybody to date there. I mean, really hard. I have to say, there weren't a lot of men in my major at the university. And if there were men, a lot of them were, it was a creative arts program. So if there were men, not to sound stereotypical or whatever, but they were gay or they were, not available, whatever, or not attractive. It's really funny. I was listening to an interview on Chris Williamson the other day. I think that's his name. It's the guy that is like super handsome that was on Love Island. And he was interviewing somebody, and they were talking about like why it's so hard to find people to date, or why aren't people dating the way they used to? Why are we not having intimate relationships at the rate that we used to? Why are so many people celibate? And one of the things they were saying that just makes a lot of sense to me is just that women aren't finding men their age attractive physically, and men aren't finding women their age that they could get attractive either. I mean, we are a country of people who are overweight and obese, and I'm just telling you, I don't even bother to try to pretend that I would date somebody who's overweight. I just won't. I mean, that was a big issue, a big reason why I'm divorced. I got suckered into a marriage with somebody who was very thin and athletic when I met them. It's basically a bait and switch, okay? And I mean, there were other problems besides just this, but truth be known, this was the biggest problem for me. Okay, I've always been really athletic, thin, petite, healthy, super health conscious, and I wouldn't even date somebody who wasn't thin and athletic or had the same lifestyle as me. Just because that's what I'm attracted to, and I'm not attracted to anything else. And I have gone years without dating anybody because I just can't find another available athlete to date, or somebody who has an athletic body. But anyway, I met my ex-husband. We were dating, and he was very athletic and very thin. And we were engaged within 4 months of meeting. And I know that sounds really soon, but we didn't get married for another like 18 months after that. So it was just like the engagement was more like a promise thing, and like, we didn't really like feel like we were engaged until it was like 6 months before. So it was really like we dated for like 3 years, two years altogether before walking down the aisle. And that entire time, he would do things with me like I would run and he would bicycle next to me. He was playing ice hockey a few nights a week, and he was very thin. He was eating the way I eat, and so he was very healthy, and he was like acting like he enjoyed eating that way, and like it was his lifestyle too, like his lifestyle choice. And none of that is fucking true. All right, now this is sort of what happened. This has nothing to do with ADD, but it's just kind of interesting. And it's a warning. Like, women can get bait and switch too. It's not just men. Like, men will date a woman and all of a sudden she'll put on like 50 pounds. It's not just men that happens to. It's women too. One time we were like dating for like a year or something. And he had moved in by that time, and there was like a shoebox in the closet on a high up shelf. And I reached up to get something out of that shelf, and that shoebox fell down. And the lid fell off, and a bunch of pictures came out. And I'm like, you know, we don't have pictures like this nowadays. Like they were like pictures, photos, right, on paper. That you actually like hold in your hand and flip through. So anyway, I was kind of looking at some of them, and they had spilled out of the box, so I was trying to put them back in the box. And I saw one picture. It was like vaguely, the people looked vaguely familiar to me, except for they were like all overweight in the picture, like, you know, way more than even husky, like overweight. And I'm like, I think he came in while I was looking at it. I'm like, who's this? Looks really familiar to me. And he goes, oh, he grabbed that out of my hand so fast. He's like, that's my brother and I. And I just looked at it. I took it back and I was looking at it and I was like shocked because he was like fat in the picture. And I'm like just staring at it with this look on my face. And he must have known I'm a picky bitch about it because he hid it. He took it out of my hand right away, and I could tell he was trying to hide it. And he goes, "Oh, that was me a long time ago, long time ago." He goes, I've always been like I've been thin for the past few years. I'll never be fat again." That was like I didn't know how to eat, And I'm a real athlete, and I'll never be like heavy again. Like what a thing to say! I'll never be heavy again, unless he knew that that was a no go, no deal for me, right? No go there deal. So I didn't really think much of it, but he put it back up in the cupboard. All right. And then, I didn't meet his mother for like a year and a half. We were getting close to the wedding, and she came up, and she was fat, and the brother is fat. When he came to our wedding, like he was really overweight. So I should have known, right? If you are dating somebody and you don't see pictures of them, ask to see pictures of them when they were younger. Ask to see pictures of their immediate family. Ask especially to see pictures of their mother. And if any of those pictures, you can bet your life that that person is going to be fat down the road. And maybe fat doesn't bother you. Maybe you don't care. You love the person, whatever, in sickness and in health. Maybe it doesn't bother you. It bothered me, right? And because I work really hard at staying thin, and I'm only attracted to thin, fit men. And so within a year of the marriage, he put on like 60 pounds. And then like within 2 years, it was like 70. And I started asking him then to like lose the weight and like, what the hell, And he's like, oh. And he told me then too that he'd been like, he'd eat my meals, but he'd also eat a meal on the way home from work, like go through the drive-thru. And I didn't know it. Not only that, but he was feeding that shit to our little son. My son has a tendency to put on weight too. Thanks. If you see it in their family, I can guarantee you they're going to be fat too. They're going to turn, if they're not fat, they will turn fat. So be prepared. And I asked him for several years to lose weight and what the deal was. And he even told me that he only lost weight to find a girlfriend. Like, it was a total trap. He's not thin by nature. He just did it to find a girlfriend and get married. Well, I'm not like for sale like that, I don't like it, I don't do the bait and switch shit. So anyway, yeah. After like 5 or 6 years after me telling him, like he put on like year 7 or whatever, and he'd gained and lost the weight a couple times, gained it right back. I finally like told him that, this is a deal breaker for me, and we had a lot of other problems too, don't get me wrong. If it had just been about that, it probably would have stayed, but there were a lot of other problems too. But that was a definite a deal breaker for me. So anyway, in the town that I moved to and lived at for 8 years, to the credit of the men who lived there, the ones that I would be attracted to, they were married and they stay married and they have a lot of kids. It's one of those kinds of states where people don't use birth control and they just have 10 kids. That's like unheard of in New England. Like that's where I grew up. You would never have that in I don't know anybody in New England who has that I grew up with or went to high school with or college, or none of my friends, any of them have. None of my siblings, nobody I know has more than 2 kids. So anyway, there just wasn't anybody. And So I used to do Tinder because I have I had a really just wasn't meeting anybody in my day to day, and I'd go to the recreation center and work out, but it was all kids, and to the kids' credit too, they're good boys there. I never had anybody give me any trouble in any gym. One time I had a guy that was following me around at the gym, and I just told him to stop, and he did, but I've never had any problems with men. I don't care if they look at me. Let them go ahead and look at me. I don't care if they look at me when I do squats. I don't care if they look at me if my sports bra is wet. I don't care if they look at my body. I just, what are they going to do? Come across the room and rape you? I mean, give me a break. Like, men have been looking at women for 70,000 years and admiring their bodies. And I don't care if men look at pornography either. I don't give a rat's butt. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and I don't care if... I mean, I would be concerned if I knew somebody was dating somebody who was looking at violent pornography of any kind, but just, other than that, I don't care what men look at. And I had a girlfriend who broke up with her boyfriend because he had a picture, or somebody had sent him a picture of her topless. She couldn't hack it, it just infuriated her, and she broke up with him. I'm like, he didn't ask for the picture. I think maybe he would be upset if he asked for it, but he didn't ask for the picture. She just sent it to him. And he, maybe he was in conversation with other girls occasionally where they were sending him pictures and he was just flirting back with them. I wouldn't even fucking care. If I was dating a guy, I would never even care. If he did something like that, I would just be whatever, no big deal. Look at the time that they're spending with you. Look at the part of the heart that they're giving to you. Look at the devotion, the level of devotion. Those are the things that matter. And if the guy exchanged a few, flirty texts, or she sent him a picture of her boobs or what, who cares? It's just so not important to me. I mean, and frankly, the guy that I'm going to tell you about in this story, we've been in an open relationship, and he's 15 years younger than me, and I've always told him, I don't really care if you sleep with somebody else. What am I going to say? We live in a college town, there are beautiful girls everywhere, and he's the type that likes to go out and drink and party and all these things, and, he's going to, we're not even a couple, we're just, friends with benefits. He's going to, I'm going to put on him that he shouldn't sleep with anybody else. I just don't care. It's not that big of a deal. Alright, so I was on Tinder and I met this one guy. He was middle-aged, closer to my age, and he was a teacher in a school system, a magnet school system. And, I can't remember, we went out one time and he was nice enough or whatever, and kind of, sort of attractive. He was single and he was white, so I was like, oh, okay, and he had a pretty nice build and he liked to do things outdoors. So we went on one date and I was okay with that. And then, at the time I was a full-time student and working, I think, doing those two things. And so as a student, I do homework at night and on the weekends. I don't go out to bars or, I do group runs, a running club, but I don't sit there afterwards for hours talking to people and drinking beer with them. I go home and I do something productive with my time. So he wanted to spend time with me. And so he said, hey, can I come over and just hang out in your apartment? And I was like, well, I've got to do homework, I said, I told you this when we were dating, that I don't have a lot of time, to go out during the week or weekends. Maybe one night a week I can do. It's just been really hard for me. If I was super attracted to him, I probably would have agreed to more, but I had met this other guy, the friends with benefits guy, and I'm going to tell you about him, and so I just probably wasn't really that inspired to do more with this other guy, the teacher. But anyway, he's like, well, I could just come over and rest and watch TV or hang out while you do your homework. I was like, okay, so why don't you come over, I'll make you some dinner, something, And so he comes over and he's sitting on my couch, and he's not just quietly sitting there. I can hear him breathing loud from the other room. All right. And every once in a while he'd call into me and try to talk to me or something. And just after he'd been there a little while, I noticed his presence was a little bit distracting. So anyway, I think I like wrapped up my homework and I went out to start dinner, and like I tried to ask him a few questions to get into a conversation with him, and like about his work and about these kids that he was teaching. It was like a magnet school for STEM kids who were like 7th and 8th grade. And like he was, a fabulous teacher and fabulous with these kids. There's no doubt about it. But I couldn't get a sentence out of my mouth and he would interrupt me, right? And so it was just so hard. Like I remember it was a struggle to have a give and take exchange with him. And a lot of times I don't like talking on the phone to people because I can't stand interruption when I'm trying to talk to somebody. Like if you call up for service and you're trying to tell them like, hey, this thing broke and it's under warranty and I bought it and, I need to send it back to you. And you get like 3 sentences out and they're like, well, what city are you living in? They start interrupting you and talking over you and telling you, well, you can't return it, and it's like they haven't even heard what you said. I just get so frustrated. I turn into a wicked Karen. Like, God forbid I should ever be recorded like that. It's just ridiculous. I can't stand it. And so anyway, we were going on. I was talking to him like this and trying to have a conversation with him. And maybe this was like the second or third time, and I had noticed that this was his conversation style. Like I couldn't talk to him about anything in depth because he was really flighty in his topics, and he interrupted everything, and he just kind of talked over me. And he was very nice, hearted and everything, but it just kind of, so like to me, I don't know, I just started equating this with some kind of like mental like a something like something missing. I don't know, it makes you wonder, like I wonder about ADD, like how does it affect your mental abilities and your IQ, especially when it comes to interrelating to other people. It's not just the interrupting, it's like they can't respond, they don't respond to the question appropriately, like it's a off topic in the way that they respond, or they don't respond at all. I don't know. So anyway, I said, do you have attention deficit disorder? Have you ever been diagnosed? And I said it to, like in a really lighthearted way, so he couldn't tell like how strongly I feel about it. And he goes, yeah, I do, because that, it's always like been a thing with me. And I used to have my wife and I used to have a really hard time. That's what he said. Like she used to accuse me of interrupting all the time and like not being interested in her things. And he goes, that's just my way. All happy-go-lucky and shit about it. Well, he got the old boot that night. Like, I made him dinner, and then, like, he called me a couple times or texted me afterwards, and I just said, look, I'm sorry, I'm just not really into this relationship in the way that you are. So, that was the end of him. Now, so that was guy number 1. Okay, so after that, I had, profile up on Tinder, and, it wasn't meeting the kind of guys like that I wanted to be with or was really interested in dating. A couple of them catfished me. I went out on a date with one guy. It looked like he was really hot. He was riding an ATV through the woods, or like a BMX, one of those bikes through the woods. And he was like thin and had red hair. Like I love red hair, So I go to meet him and he's like 35 pounds heavier. I'm like, and I said right to him, I said, this picture does not look like you. I'm like, come on. And he's like, yeah, that's 2 years old. And I'm like, well, I only date fit people. And he's like, I'm still fit. I'm like, what do you do for exercise? Look, I'm riding an ATV right there. Riding a BMW, or riding an ATV, whatever it was, like, it was a motorized thing. I'm like, that's not an exercise. That's not exercise. That's like leisure and recreation. That's not exercise. Exercise is you go to the gym and you sweat your ass off, okay? And you count calories, and you are thin, That's not exercise, dude. And he's like, well, really? Like, you're just like dissing me or blowing me off because of like 30 pounds, 20, 30 pounds? I'm like, you don't look like you look in this picture. And I just got up and left, you know. I said goodbye or whatever. And so I wasn't meeting the type of guys that I wanted to meet. So the next thing I did was I changed up my Tinder profile and I said, I don't want anybody who's overweight. If you're overweight, don't even contact me because it won't work and I won't date you. I don't care how nice the guy is. And it's not like I hate people that are overweight. I don't really care. It's not that. It's just I won't be physically attracted to them. And I know like that person will lean in for a kiss or want to have sex or whatever, and my whole body, my skin will crawl. And that will never change. You know, it won't change on the 5th date. It won't change on the 10th date. It'll be there on the 1st date. And so it's just like, it's a no-go for me, you know? And so another thing I put in there was, no, I don't want to date anybody with ADD. And so it was a long profile. So this is guy number 2 with ADD. And I matched with somebody, and he was at my school, where I was going to school. I don't remember what he was majoring in, but we talked. We had a few pleasant exchanges on Tinder, and then he writes me back. He goes, oh, I just noticed your profile. I just read your profile. Like, that's a big thing, too. Like, don't contact somebody until you've read their profile, okay? Don't just look at my pictures and contact me for my pictures, because I'm not going to be like your picture, okay? I'm not going to be like the object in the picture. I am a person, like a real person, and I am more than just the picture. So I hate when men do that. But anyways, he goes, I just read your profile, and I'm ADD, and I can't help what I am. He goes, I can't believe that you would say such a thing in your profile. I can't believe that you wouldn't date somebody. Like, how do people help it? He goes, how do I help it that I have ADD, and I should be able to date people? I'm like, look, buddy. I swear, he was like a girl crying. And I'm like, look, buddy, I'm sorry if it hurts your feelings, okay? But I'm just telling you, I've had some relationships in my life, and at the time, like, can't remember if I had this current supervisor or not, but I had plenty of people in my life who were ADD, enough to know that I didn't want to date one. And I just had broken off with this other guy, the teacher guy, and I'm like, look, I'm really sorry if it offends you, but people are allowed to have dating preferences, and this is my dating preference, and like, I don't discriminate against you. Go on with your life, do whatever you want, have fun, date whoever you can, date whoever you want, you know. It's just not for me, okay? And I sent that to him, and he, what do you call it, like, deleted my account. So that's guy number 2. All right, now, all this time, like, in 2018, something like this, I went to an office at the university where I worked, and to talk about spending some money from our department on advertising and in a radio station. And I went to this office, and I got invited to go, and I sat down with this guy, and he's like 15 years younger than me. And I looked at him, and I fell in love in the minute I saw him. Like, I was just like, oh man, like, he is fine, you know? And I was looking at his hand. He wasn't married, you know, no ring, and I was just like, oh my God, you know? And I was like, how am I going to get this guy, you know? How am I going to get to know him? And I couldn't even make sense sitting there talking to him. He was trying to sell me advertising or something on the radio, and I'm like, we don't have any money, whatever, you know. And he was asking me about like what I do at the university, and I'm like, why don't you come to my department, and I'll show you around, and I'll introduce you, because what I really wanted to do was have a podcast. And I wanted to know how to get the financial support and backing to produce a podcast with some of the professors in our department. And I'm like, why don't you come with me, and I'll introduce you to the people who do have money in our department, who would have the say to spend it, you know. And I knew they weren't going to spend it, but I just trying to think of some kind of way to get some time with this guy. And so he was like, okay, you know. And I thought he felt the same way I did, and like he was responding in the same way, in a positive way. you know, but it was probably my imagination. So anyway, we met a little while later. He came and we spent like the morning and the afternoon together, and not just like walking around the department and meeting people, but like talking. We went out for coffee and stuff like this, all on the campus. And this was all having to do with, are we going to buy, advertisement or not? But even like we talked about personal things beyond that. And I can't remember how, but I think I friended him on Facebook or Instagram or something. And so, like, I couldn't stop thinking about the guy, and I emailed him after that, and I thanked him. Now, I didn't want to harass somebody with my work, address, so I think then I did ask him we could be friends on Instagram. And so, like a week went by, and I started chatting with him on Instagram. I got into his direct messages, and we started, like, somehow the conversation went to intimate issues, intimate talk, and he came over, and we've been friends with benefits ever since. And after the first time, like, we went out one night, we met out and had dinner, and then we went to my apartment. And I went along, like, after the first time, I asked him, "Are you married?" Like, I should have asked him this before. I really did assume that he wasn't married. He wasn't wearing a ring or anything. And he did ask me out. And he's like, "No." I'm like, "Do you have a girlfriend? Somebody that you're with?" And he said, "No." This is the morning after, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I was like, holy shit, this guy's available, and I just had him, maybe I can have him again. I can have him for a boyfriend, And I started just like, these things started running through my head. Like, I couldn't believe how fucking lucky I was, Like, I loved this guy from the minute I said, like, I loved him. I wasn't attracted to him. I loved him. And, like, it was love at first sight. I've never had that before. Maybe one other time, that one other time I ended up loving that guy for a whole lifetime. But anyway, so it was real. Like, it was real love, And, he's like, "Look," he goes, "I'm not looking for any kind of relationship. I don't do girlfriends." I was just like, shit, man. I was so disappointed when he said that. And I was like, okay, And I don't know, but somehow we came to agreement that we would be friends with benefits or something. But, ever after that, like, he would, like, I had some pictures on Instagram, and he would like some of my pictures sometimes, not that often, but once in a while. And I was looking at his Instagram a lot, and I noticed that he followed a lot of these bimbo type women who are on Instagram, a lot younger than him, very bosomy and everything, like hanging it all out there. I don't do any of that stuff. I don't do it on Instagram. My Instagram account is just filled with like racing pictures, like running pictures, and like a few pictures of like personal home life stuff, but nothing like really racy. And I would notice sometimes, like, I would watch him and he'd be fucking posting on these girls' pictures all day long. Okay? All day. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, this guy is supposed to be working, and like he's on Instagram all day. And I was watching him. Like, I was a student. I had the time to watch him. I wasn't working. I didn't say anything. Whatever. It's his thing. But there was this one time, like, I noticed he was posting a lot on one of my classmates' pictures. And this girl, I've been in classes with her. There's nothing special about this girl other than she's blonde. Like, she's not that smart. She's not that pretty, okay? And he was, like, always posting on her page. And by this time, he wasn't ever, like, posting on my pictures anymore. So he came over one time, and I asked him, I'm like, I said, I would never ask you to not sleep with another woman, I think we had been together like 4 or 5 times by this point. And I said to him, like, I would never ask you. I really don't care who you sleep with. I really don't. It doesn't bother me at all. I said, I might sleep with somebody else. Feel free. But I said, I do have one thing to ask you. And he's like, what? I'm like, please do not, like, date my classmates or pursue my classmates, I said, I follow your Instagram account, and I know that you are hitting on some of my classmates. I said, it's really upsetting to me, and I know you really don't care. So if you wouldn't mind, could you please stop doing that? And he's like, well, I don't know who you mean. And I'm like, I think you do, you know. Like, I said, some of the girls that you're hitting on are my classmates. And I said, I've sat in classes with those girls. There's one in particular. You know, go back and look at your posts over the past couple of months. I said, that girl, there is nothing special about her at all. Like, I've been in classes with her. I've had class discussions with her. She's smart. Like, that sounds really mean, but I'm like, she doesn't have any original thought. She's not that pretty. Like, whatever it is that you think you're into about this woman, like, it's just because she's blonde. You don't know her. There's nothing special about her. I'm just telling you, do whatever you want. And I said, you know, if you really like her, just please, and you're going to pursue her, just tell me, and you and I won't see each other anymore, because I can't do that. Like, I cannot have you dating one of my classmates and sleeping with me at the same time. Like, that is upsetting to me. Like, if you're sleeping with somebody I don't know, I don't care. But don't let it be one of my classmates. And he's like, I promise you, he goes, I'm not like pursuing anybody from your school, your college. Not seriously. He's like, I don't even really know who you mean. He goes, I'll go back and look at my post and I'll figure it out. But he's like, I promise you, like, I'm not dating anybody. So I kind of believed him. But over the years, I did notice that he posted a lot on her page. So finally, after years went by, I'm just like, are you in love with this girl? And he denied it. I don't know. To this day, I don't know. But here's the thing, like, with that relationship, I always had to be the one initiating. And that just made me feel so bad. Like, I always had to email him first, text him first, and sometimes I would double text him, which is like, you know, every dating site on YouTube is like, no double text anybody, you know. Don't look desperate, be in your feminine, don't pursue men. If I didn't fucking pursue him, I wouldn't have him in my, you know, what I need. Like, I wouldn't have had it, I wouldn't have gotten anything from him. And I can't go without for months on end. And I used to cry. Like, I felt like he was starving me to death, you know. It was so hard. And, like, I'd go a couple months trying not to contact him. And that whole time I would just be thinking about, like, how he doesn't like me, how I'm not good enough, how I'm not blonde, how I'm not busty enough, how I'm not wearing low-cut shirts enough, how I'm not skinny enough. And I would go on these crash diets. Like, I never weigh more than 110. Okay, sometimes I would go on, like, crash diets, and I would get down to, like, 102, and I would start sending him pictures. Because I knew that he really liked that, you know. And 102 is not healthy weight. And I would do it and do it over and over again. And I would text him, and I would ask him to come over. And sometimes he'd be like, okay, Wednesday. And then Wednesday would come, and he'd be like, oh, I can't do it tonight. How about, like, Sunday? Or, like, you know, he never took me anywhere other than that first time out, you know. I don't know why. You know, I used to ask him, is it because I'm too old for you? And because he is like 15 years younger than me. But honest to God, if you stood us next to each other, you'd never know. You'd think he was 5 years older than me. He looks older than me now. Oh, I've had my sweet get back at him. Big time. I've had sweet revenge. Not in a kind of mean way, but I'll tell you about it. But anyway, I always had to pursue him. And, like, over the years, that was just how it was. And sometimes he would come over and I would just cry and I would beg and plead with him. I'm like, can you please, like, why do I always have to pursue you? Do you understand how, like, humiliating it is for me to have to text you and ask you for sex? You know, ask you to come over here. I said, I have men who would kill to come over here and be a partner to me. And I turn them down. I'm not interested in them. You're the only one I have, and you know it. You're the only one I found that I'm really interested in. And I'm like, I have to beg you. Like, I don't understand it. Why am I not worthy of better treatment from you? You know? And he would say, this would be after weeks of me, like, crying and imagining, like, how awful I am and all these things. And he'd be like, he goes, there's nothing wrong with you. You're beautiful. Your body is perfect. Your pictures are nice. He goes, I just don't want a girlfriend, and I don't pursue you because I don't ever want you to get the idea that we're going to be boyfriend and girlfriend. He's like, you could go out and get a boyfriend easily. I'm like, there is no other men here. There are no other men here that I'm attracted to. I've been on Tinder for 3 years, been on Tinder for 4 years, been on Tinder for 5 years. Like, I look for men at school. I go to the rec center. I look for men in my running group. There aren't any. Like, please, don't make me beg you. But I always had to freaking beg him. And it was really weird because he would always be super sweet. Like, he would text me on holidays and he'd always remember. And I would say mean things to him sometimes. Like, I called him, like, out on his, like, following these Insta bimbos, you know, and I told him that I thought he was addicted to pornography and all of these things, you know. Like, I said mean things to him and he would always forgive me and he never held it against me. And I mean, I have said really mean things to him in the past, and he's never held it against me. And he has always talked super sweet to me. And when I have been crying, he's been like really like support, like he'll come over to try to comfort me. Like, he cares, you know. And now he even tells me, like in the past year or so, he started telling me he loves me. But I've been telling him for years that I love him, and he would just not say anything, you know. But finally, he's like, I love you. But I think he just means it as we're friends, you know, and that's okay, whatever. But, you know, here's the thing is, one time we were laying in bed together, and it occurred to me, like, hey, do you have, like, a learning disability? Like, I couldn't understand why he couldn't just simply fucking text me back. You know, be more consistent with his communication. And finally it occurred to me, like, maybe there's something wrong with his communication patterns. Like, maybe he just doesn't really know how to communicate. And he's like, I have some kind of disability, learning disability. I don't know what it is. I've never been diagnosed because I know that there's something. So we were laying in bed together and he told me this. So I didn't get into it any further than that, but I have always suspected that he has mild ADD or something. Something is just not quite right. Now, case in point, okay, so I've never seen him out and about, so I don't know how he acts around a lot of people, because I've only seen him with me, and usually we're like in the bedroom in the dark. I don't really see much about him. And so right before I moved, we went out, and that was like shocking for me. Like, he agreed to meet up with me at a running event, and he was going to drink beer, and I was going to run the race and then sit with him afterwards. So I go out with him, we're sitting there, and I'm like trying not to do like a public display of affection because I don't want to piss him off and press my luck, but I was just like elated to be out sitting next to this guy somewhere doing something with him, you know. I just loved him so much. And it meant so much to me to just be out with him once. So anyway, we're sitting there, and I look at him, and he's just like looking all around at everybody, like every direction, you know. And sometimes it's just looking at nothing, but he's just like, he's not attending visually to me in the conversation. Like, I don't expect him to just sit there and stare at me, but he's like not focusing visually on me. And he's talking to me and everything, he's fine. It's just like I noticed that he's doing that. And he's really like twitchy or jittery or some shit. Like, it was weird. And I kind of just looked at him, and I'm like thinking in my head, you know, he's not even that good looking anymore. And this is how he acts. Like, this is weird. This is weird behavior, like social behavior. I mean, it's not aberrant or anything, but it's just so obvious that there's something like just a little neurologically off with him. So anyway, but I want to tell you, like, that's half the reason why I had to leave that job and leave that town, because I spent every weekend of my life driving around imagining what it would be like to have him for a boyfriend. That was my love life, driving around imagining myself in a relationship. Imagining. Like, I deserve more than just to imagine having somebody take me to a coffee shop or go out with me to a movie, or take me out somewhere, take me out to the art walk. I deserve more than that after 6 years. So anyway, like about a year ago or so, he comes over to my apartment, and I notice that finally, like, he's just turning over 40, and he looks older than me, and like his hair is graying, and he's putting on weight, and his hair is receding. To me, I still love him, you know, and none of that stuff bothers me, but I just was thinking objectively about it, and I'm like, this guy, his nights of going out and just, like, he was super good looking. He could have gone out any night of the week and picked up a woman, like, no problem, you know, and really charming. And believe me, I'm a connoisseur. I know a guy when he's good looking, you know. And I've had the best of the best. So I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, you know, before this stage, he was like an 8 or a 9. In looks, not like money-wise, but in looks. And he had a good job, certainly, you know. But the thing is like, so he comes over, and I'm starting to note all this stuff about him, you know, like he's aging. And I was kind of teasing him a little bit about it, you know, because I can dye my hair. And so I don't have any grays, you know, and I look a lot younger than I actually am. Like, you would never guess how old I am. And sometimes I go to the gym, or I'll go out or something, or on Tinder, and meet some guy, like a young guy, and they want to take me home and fuck me, like, that night, you know. I've had students ask me, like, bold, you know. I know even young men, like, I can still attract young men. Sometimes at the gym, men will just stop what they're doing and, like, to check me out, like, check out my legs, maybe just checking out an athletic body or whatever, but I know that I'm still attractive, and I can get men who are even much younger than him. But here's the thing, like, he can like all those fucking Insta bimbos he wants, but he is not going to be able to go out and pick one up anymore. It is over for him. He's not going to be able to go to a club and just pick up a woman anymore and take her home with no questions asked. Nothing. Like, he's not going to be able to do it anymore. Those days of him doing that are over. They're gone. They're done. And he'll never get it back. And so, you know, we're not together. We're not a couple. And every once in a while, like, he'll text me and be like, I'm so desperate. You know, I can tell he's desperate. Like, go out and find somebody. Do them. Go ahead. Go. I'm not holding you back. And he doesn't, and he hasn't, because he can't. So I have my revenge, you know. If I wanted to right now, I'm not trying to brag, I've got a list of men in my Tinder from here to Denver. All of them are like under 35. If I said yes to one of them, they would get in their car and drive here right now and ask to do something physical with me. You know, it would be no problem. I could get it. But he is not going to be able to get one of those bimbo chicks all the way from like 600, 500 miles away that he would spend all day long texting, you know, or posting on her pictures on Instagram. He's not going to be able to get one. He's not going to be able to get her. She's not going to come for him. He won't even be able to go to a bar and pick up a woman. So I don't know if he's a fuckboy. I don't know if he's just not all that into me. I don't know if he's, you know, has some sort of problem. Like, I don't know what it is that prevents him from being in a relationship with me. I really don't. I wouldn't say he's a fuckboy, not now. He might have been one at some point, but I don't know. I think sometimes now, after that night that we spent out just recently, I really seriously thought, okay, it must be ADD, you know, and it affects him in such a way that, like, he can't even concentrate or focus on a relationship. Like, sustained communication with a woman. He has one male friend that he hangs out with all the time. Like, he's been friends with the same male for like 6 years, like a friend of his. And that's it. That's the only real relationship he has. And to me, that's failure. Like, that's not a man. I don't know what that is. It's like a boy or something, but to me, that's a failure. It's a failure launch failure to thrive. Anyway, that's my truth bomb for the day. See ya.